Have you ever heard of an African kingdom, so rich, so powerful, and so clever, that people came from faraway lands just to see its beauty? No? That's not your fault. Because someone didn't want you to know. This is not a story from a fairy tale. It is real. It happened. And it was hidden. Once upon a time, in the heart of Africa, stood a kingdom made of stone, with walls taller than houses, kings who wore gold like clothes, and cities built with no cement, just stone stacked so well, they're still standing today. This place was called Great Zimbabwe. It was home to thousands of people. They had markets, palaces, and powerful kings. They didn't just trade with nearby villages, they traded with China, with Persia, even with the Middle East. So why don't we learn about it in school? Because someone decided that if they told the truth, it would change everything you believe about Africa, about history, about power. Before ships came to take people, before maps showed Europe as the center of the world, Africa had kings, cities, books, trade. There was Timbuktu with libraries full of knowledge. There was the Benin Empire with bronze works so detailed that even modern artists are confused. And there was Great Zimbabwe, with its giant stone city that still stands today. So what happened? Why did people stop talking about these places? Because the people who came to take land and power didn't want the world to know that Africa had all of this first. They didn't want to admit. We did not discover Africa. Africa was already thriving. Let's go back to Great Zimbabwe. The name Zimbabwe means house of stone. This kingdom existed over 900 years ago, long before any European castle was built. No cement. No machines. Just perfect stone walls, some over 30 feet high. These people were amazing builders. They knew math, astronomy, and how to track stars. They had a king, priests, soldiers, and farmers. They also had gold. Lots of it. Gold was traded from Zimbabwe to the coast, then sent across the Indian Ocean. People in India and Arabia used it. Chinese vases were found there. Even glass from Persia. Great Zimbabwe was part of the world, not isolated. When white explorers came in the 1800s, they found the ruins. They saw the greatness. But they said, there's no way Africans built this. So they made up stories. They said the people of King Solomon built it, or Arabs, or even aliens. But science says, it was Africans. Historians now know the truth. But old lies still live in books and minds. So what else have we missed? What more have they hidden from us? Centuries ago, in southern Africa, there was a kingdom so rich, so advanced, and so full of mystery, that when European explorers found it, they couldn't believe Africans had built it. But they did. This is the story of Great Zimbabwe, a city of stone, a land of kings, and a powerful empire that time tried to forget. Imagine walking into a city without bricks, without cement, yet the walls are still standing, 900 years later. That's Great Zimbabwe. Built between the 11th and 15th centuries, it was the capital of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe. This civilization ruled the southern part of Africa, in what is today known as modern Zimbabwe. These walls weren't just piles of rocks. They were perfectly carved, stacked by hand, layer by layer. Some walls reached over 11 meters high, that's taller than a 3-story building. And they didn't fall. They still stand. No cement. No iron bars. Just stone, and skill. The architecture alone proves that these people had deep knowledge of engineering, geometry, and craftsmanship. Great Zimbabwe wasn't just a city. It was alive. Thousands of people lived there, kings, warriors, traders, blacksmiths, farmers, artists. Imagine children running between clay homes. Women carrying water in pots. Men hammering tools or trading in busy markets. They farmed millet and sorghum, raised cattle, and mined gold, lots of it. The people of Great Zimbabwe were master goldsmiths. They shaped gold into jewelry, coins, and gifts for the elite. And then they traded it far and wide. You might think they traded with nearby villages. But Great Zimbabwe was part of a global economy. Gold from Zimbabwe made its way to the Swahili coast, then sailed across the Indian Ocean to India, Persia, and China. Archaeologists found Chinese porcelain, Arabian glass, and Persian beads inside the city. How did these get there? Through coastal trade ports like Sofala and Kilwa, African traders exchanged gold, ivory, and animal skins for spices, fabrics, and fine goods. This wasn't a forgotten backwater. It was a rich international hub in the 1200s. At the top of the hills sat the king, the Mambo. He was more than a ruler. He was believed to be chosen by the ancestors, a sacred figure who connected the people to the spirits of the land. The king lived in the hill complex, the oldest part of Great Zimbabwe. It overlooked the rest of the city, just like the king watched over his people. There was no written language. But the people used symbols, like soapstone birds, to pass meaning down through generations. These birds, carved from stone, were sacred. Today, they are the national symbol of Zimbabwe. By the 15th century, something changed. The city grew too large. The soil couldn't support the people. Water became scarce. And slowly, the people left. They didn't vanish. They migrated southward, forming smaller states and leaving behind their stone city. But the buildings stayed. Great Zimbabwe was no small village. It was a global trading power, long before global trade had a name. This kingdom controlled gold, ivory, and trade routes that reached the Middle East, Persia, and Asia. Traders carried gold from mines deep in Africa to coastal ports like Sofala and Kilwa, where Arab and Indian ships awaited. But how do we know this is true? Because archaeologists found the evidence. Right there, in the African soil. Chinese porcelain from the Ming dynasty. Persian glass bowls with delicate curves. Arab coins with Arabic script. All discovered in and around the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. This city was connected to the world. It was rich, powerful, global. But instead of celebrating that truth, something else happened. In the late 1800s, European explorers entered Zimbabwe. They saw the massive walls. They saw the gold. And they refused to believe Africans had built it. Karl Mach, a German explorer, said the ruins were built by the Queen of Sheba. Others blamed Phoenicians. Or mysterious, lost white tribes. Why? Because if Africans built this, it meant they had power. Civilization. Wealth. Intelligence. And that didn't fit the colonial story. In 1890, Cecil Rhodes and the British South Africa Company took control of the area. They renamed the land Southern Rhodesia. And they worked hard to erase the truth. British archaeologist James Theodore Bent, sponsored by Rhodes, visited Great Zimbabwe in 1891. He wasn't trained in African history. He ignored local oral traditions. But he claimed the builders must have been white or Arab. His version made it into textbooks. Generations of students, even Africans, were taught that their ancestors couldn't have built this. But truth doesn't stay buried forever. In the 1920s and 1930s, a new generation of archaeologists began real work. People like Gertrude Cotton Thompson, who shocked the world when she said, "There is no reason whatsoever to believe the ruins were built by anyone but Africans." Today, the ruins are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They stand as proof of African brilliance, not myth. So why did colonial powers lie? Because history is power. If you erase a people's past, you make them easier to control. If you make them believe they've always been poor or powerless, they stop asking questions. The truth is, African civilizations were not primitive. They were builders of stone cities, traders of gold and ivory, mathematicians who studied the stars, rulers of vast empires that stretched farther than many European kingdoms at the time. The story of Great Zimbabwe is just one chapter in a much greater African legacy. From the towering pyramids of Nubia, to the libraries of Timbuktu, to the rich bronzes of Benin, African civilizations were diverse, intelligent, and deeply connected to the ancient world. The idea that Africa had no history, it was a lie. A tool of colonial control. But you are here. And that means the truth is rising again. Knowing where you come from changes how you see yourself. It reminds you. You come from royalty, from scholars, from engineers, from dreamers. And it teaches the world something else, too. That African genius helped build human civilization. And should never be left out of the story again.